Hey, what is up, PlusUltra fam? Time for podcast number 21. Hashtag PlusUltra fam shoutouts to Maids Johnson, What If Universe, Stephen Craigie, Nicholas Hammond, BLK Wolf, Sans127, White Blade, Common Sense Bruh, Doug, Electric Skull, and Fear the Pig Gaming. We've got a lot to go over with this podcast, so unfortunately we won't be doing any interesting comments on this one, but the next one we definitely will. And as always with the podcast, no recap due to time constraints. Sume Inuzuka is able to reach her daughter Hana Inuzuka just in time, where the two then rush Nozomaru into surgery. While scanning the dog via medical ninjutsu, she finds that not only is there damage to his skin and fur on the outside, but his internal organs were actually suffering from chakra burns themselves. Hearing this, Sume is torn, as she has a duty to get back to the exams if her team shows up, and so creates a single shadow clone to be dispelled if Hana had any updates before leaving. Staying focused, Hana is shocked as she's never seen this kind of damage on a dog, and does her best to try and repair the burns as best as she can. Thankfully, the damage was within Hana's range of healing. After nearly 6 hours of work, she sighs in exhaustion and announces to the clone of her mother that Nozomaru is no longer in critical state, but he won't be awake for a few days, and he surely won't be up and in fighting condition for even longer than that. Back in the exam arena, Sume receives her clone's memories and sighs in relief before finding Naruto, who had been extremely quiet and sullen since he'd handed off his partner to Sume. Currently, he was surrounded by his team, and once they caught up with them, her own team, including the hot-blooded Kiba, who was trying to interrogate answers about what happened in the forest from Naruto. Ordering Kiba to cool it, Sume softens her tone a bit and squats down to look Naruto in the eyes. She then tells him that his puppy is going to live, getting the boy's eyes to finally come back to life, before he found his adopted mother's fist dragging through his hair in a noogie. His mother only showed the shortest amount of affection before getting serious and announcing to Naruto and the others that it seemed like the last of the teams had just now arrived. And furthermore, Naruto needed to understand that not only was Nozomaru out of commission, his recovery was going to take a while, meaning Naruto would be fighting on his own. I also think at this moment, Sune, based on what Naruto told her happening in the woods, would loosen his seal with her own 5-element seal. As Naruto's caretaker, it would make a lot of sense for her to have some type of technique that allows her to quickly suppress a small amount of the Nine-Tails chakra in case of emergency. This is also a technique that Jiraiya and Orochimaru were able to learn, and I do imagine that if Jiraiya took the time to teach it to her, she would be able to pick it up in time. Now, this isn't a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but psychologically, to Naruto, who really hasn't fought without his partner since their first meeting, it's a bit off-putting to have to shake off the rest of being solo with no warning until the last minute. Hearing this, Kiba growls, still angry his brother would not take the time to tell him what was actually happening, and he could guess that his mother would not do so either. For a long time now, he'd known there was something about Naruto that no one wanted to tell him, and if he didn't find out soon, he'd go insane. Shaking those negative thoughts aside for the moment, he decides to focus on the now and stops his brother. He explains to him what happened while he was in the forest and imparts a single warning. If you run to a boy with red hair and the conjure for love above his left eye, run. Do not fight him. Tsunade. Moving into the next stage, the third Hokage and proctors would still inform the candidates of the need for the preliminaries, as there are still too many of them. This entire scene would go pretty close to the canon of the manga and anime that most people are used to, meaning that Kabuto still drops out to keep his cover, and this drops the number of participants from 21 to 20. Naruto also comes to a realization of why his mother stressed so hard that he would not have Nozomaru to fight by his side right now. And to the last part of this particular podcast What If, I said I want to take the time and actually randomize the matchups, whereas I don't usually do that with podcast What Ifs, and I actually did do so. But easy fights I'll be running through pretty quickly just to keep the narration shorter than it has to be. Hearing of the upcoming fights, Kiba shakes his negative thoughts aside for the moment as he decides to focus on the now and present. He stops his brother and his brother's team as well as his own. He explains to them what had happened to them while he was in the forest and imparts a single warning onto everyone. If you're matched up with the boy with red hair and the conjure for love above his left eye, do not fight him. Sume and Naruto raise their eyes at this statement, but Sume tells Naruto to consider what his brother is telling him. When I put the 20 names in a random matchup generator, we received Match 1, Tenten vs Choji, Match 2, Hinata vs Rock Lee, Match 3, Kankuro vs Yoroi, Match 4, Shino vs Gaara, Match 5, Misumi vs Dosu, Match 6, Kiba vs Zaku, Match 7, Shikamaru vs Sakura, Match 8, Neji vs Ken, Match 9, Naruto vs Temari, and Match 10, Sasuke vs Ino. Getting right into them, I'd say Match 1 is somewhat of a toss-up. My gut instinct is to give it to Tenten, who definitely has a speed advantage, experience advantage, and the advantage of fighting long range. But then I factor in her cockiness, which can lead her to underestimate the barbecue-motivated Choji, and I don't think that's good for her. I would also argue Tenten's weapons couldn't pierce the human boulder technique. If Tenten has the ability to sharpen her weapons with wind chakra, then sure, but basic weapons against the fast-moving attack on that dense ball won't be super effective. Because of this, Tenten will be forced into using the Twin Rising Dragons. I would imagine this attack has much more cutting power and power in general. But when you really break it down, it is just a finite stream of weapons. So I would imagine, in his human boulder form, Choji would either be able to avoid the brunt of the attack or tank most of the hits. While Tenten could use the wires on the weapons to attack again, I think at this point it'd be much too late. With their weapons scattered all around the ground, Choji begins rushing right towards her, still thinking about that barbecue. But I think that guy would step in to protect any of his students from serious injury, so I'll say this fight ends when Choji is about to run Tenten over, when Guy appears in front of him, easily stopping his rolling. To give Tenten a bit of credit, it will be revealed that Choji is a tiny bit of a porcupine at the moment, with a few kunai and a few bladed weapons having stuck in his back very shallowly, so he doesn't come out of it unscathed, and technically, he never actually hit Tenten. I just don't feel right giving the fight to Tenten when I'm not certain her attacks could pierce Choji's human boulder technique enough for serious vital damage. So Choji returns to the stands and rushes everyone along so he could go get his barbecue, while Tenten sulks at being defeated by a first year and saved in front of everyone. Match 2 could be an easy call, but there are two factors we must consider. Number 1, this is a more confident and combat-ready Hinata, and number 2, Lee likely wouldn't go all out from the start, meaning like with Gaara, he would start the fight with the weights on and without the 8 gates open, but he's likely not about to go into this fight with the thought of actually having to take them off. I think there could be a few quick exchanges where Hinata's gentle fist techniques prove to be somewhat effective, at least doing some damage on Lee, but the moment he releases the weights, I think he'll be very easily able to subdue his fellow Genin. She's stronger, yeah, but Lee tried to challenge Neji a lot, so he's not a brand new to the gentle fist or the Byakugan. The two are able to return to the stands with Hinata very sad, but Naruto would definitely cheer her up and remind her just watching the matches could help her get some good training in. Remember, these two have kind of been friends for a good while since Naruto was able to kind of find where she was when she'd be spying on him because he's an Inuzuka and I can smell you. Also, Lee would get the advantage of only one of his trump cards being revealed right now. Match 3, Kankuro wins. Even if Yoroi gets a hold of his real body, the crow can still be operated, and if he grabs onto the crow, he's in deep trouble. Match 4, the warning that Kiba gave to Hinata in canon and Naruto here would likely be repeated to Shino again afterwards. Kiba wants him to quit because he doesn't want him to die, he's his teammate. But I think Shino would agree to this. He would have been right next to Kiba when he saw Gaara's true might, so I think he'd be on the exact same page as Kiba. He is not keen on taking on the Sand Shinobi. That said, Shino is smart. I think he would choose to take Gaara on for the sole reason of gathering more information for his teammates and comrades. If they are matched up against him later, they're gonna need that. Sume is a bit nervous to let him do this, but the boy is a shinobi. He's an adult, a child soldier, and he's trying to do the right thing here. She has to allow him to at least try before stepping in or trying to mother him. He can't have that. Before the match begins, Shino would face off with Gaara, and the instant the match actually begins, he has to switch himself out with a butt clone as sand crushes it. With his first experiment, he implants his insects into the sand to have them study it. Through their pheromones and communication, they're able to tell him a few things. Number 1, the sand is imbued with potent chakra. Number 2, they're having trouble consuming it as there's a malevolent nature to it. It's just like chakra felt from Nozomaru and Naruto in the forest, which is very strange. Number 3, they were being killed by the sand almost systematically, suggesting to Shino the sand is autonomous as his insects should be too small when not gathered to be sensed by Gaara himself. With these observations made, Shino begins trying to gather more information just to see how far he can push this. He tries to test Gaara's range, speed, etc. Unfortunately, he would be tired from substituting himself with bug clone after bug clone. He even tried using tricks with the normal clone jutsu just to save some of his colony. That, and with his colony being decimated right now, Shino would go on to forfeit, enraging Gaara. I think we'd see a similar scene to the Jonin stepping in to stop Neji, here as without getting any blood since the forest 5 days ago, and being surrounded by combat, Gaara would be ridiculously bloodthirsty right now. Match 5, Dosu wins. This is a horrible matchup for Misumi, and his one technique isn't very impressive considering he has to get so close to use it, and he isn't even that fast. Match 6 with Kiba vs Zaku is interesting. Even though Team Dosu took on Hinata, Kiba, and Lee in the forest before Sasuke woke up, I think all of Team Dosu would only be mildly beat up, not bandaged like Zaku was in canon. It had been a 3-on-3 battle at one point, so when Sasuke had woken up, I don't see Dosu wanting to stay in that situation. Then it'd be 4-on-3 with the possibility of more and more disadvantages coming and coming. He'd leave their scroll and flee while they had the chance. So Zaku was nowhere near as injured as in canon, meaning he has access to both of his hands and he's in better overall shape. Meanwhile, this timeline's Kiba is bigger and stronger and more skilled than his canon version by having two rivals as he grew up in Sasuke and Naruto's shadow. And with Naruto being his younger brother, that really pissed him off, making him work a lot harder to catch up with where Naruto had gone to. Having just watched the match with Dosu, I think Kiba would be smart enough to realize Sound Ninja liked using sound-based attacks, meaning his enhanced hearing could be his downfall here. Beyond that, he doesn't have much in terms of real long-range ability. Remember, Kiba here grew up alongside Naruto pulling pranks. I think this would cause Kiba to learn to be a bit more tactical and strategic with his thinking. However, pride gets in his way. As he faces off with Zaku, he orders Akamaru to stay out of this. He had two reasons. Number one, if Naruto had to prove that he could go without Nozomaru for a day, then he would prove the exact same thing. And number two, he wanted to keep some tricks hidden for both his and his brother's sake later on during these matches. Sume calls her son and student an idiot for underestimating his opponent, while Naruto barks at his brother to stop copying him and Nozomaru like losers. Akamaru is confused but obeys his master and returns to the stands with Sume and Naruto. The match begins and Kiba instantly drops to the 4-point stance of the Beast Mirror Jutsu. He then charges right at Zaku at a high speed. Remember how the original Kiba was able to speed blitz Naruto? Well, this Kiba will be faster than that. Zaku smirks and tries to blast him with his decapitating airwaves. Kiba veers to the right at the last possible second and only suffers a shadow slice from the top of his shoulder down to his side off his hip. Wincing, he continues his charge, now close enough to pounce on Zaku. And with his speed, he would reach him before he actually had time to react. Grabbing onto his wrist and kicking his legs onto the ground, he tackled Zaku and struggled for a bit as the two rolled into the ground. Kiba growls and holds Zaku still for some reason before sighing and jumping away. Zaku snarls, yelling, and stands up, telling Kiba he's dead if that's the best he can fight. He then feels a weird wet worn spot somewhere on his clothes and looks down at his thick yellow t-shirt to see a wet spot. The Sound Ninja was more confused and angry now and had to ask Kiba if he had just peed on him. The arena goes quiet for a bit as they all stare. Kiba blushes and admits to pissing on him, but claiming that it was a legitimate technique created by his clan called dynamic marking. Sume nearly jumped into the arena to clobber her son, while Naruto burst out laughing his ass off while asking Kiba why he would do that. The other boy barks back at his brother, saying that it was part of one of those super cool multi-step plans at the last possible minute to be a big hero things that they had always talked about while growing up. Once hearing that, Naruto could not stop laughing for two reasons that kept him from actually responding. Number one, none of those plans ever involved him pissing his pants to mark the enemy. And number two, Kiba still had a wet spot on his pants. Kiba growls and snarls and nearly jumps up to the stands to fight his brother, when the slightest displacement of the scent he just dropped in the air caused him to instantly know that Zaku was moving for an attack while his back was turned to him. Dodging by stopping, dropping, and rolling backwards, Kiba once again pounced at Zaku, this time swinging his legs out first, kicking the other boy's hands out away from his body. Meanwhile, his hand threw a small smoke bomb directly into Zaku's face and hopefully into his eye. Zaku rears back, having reacted quick enough to close his eyes as the smoke began spreading to a large area. Kiba smirked and began to spread more and more smoke bombs all around the area, and soon only the Hyugas and Kakashi could really tell what was going on in the battle. Sasuke soon got curious and tested out commanding his own Sharingan for the first time, and getting to work after only 2 tries. With the lock onto Zaku, and Zaku having no way of actually seeing him, Kiba cheers and activates the passing feign technique and flies right at Zaku, catching him in the chest and knocking him down. The other boy groans, completely confused as to how Kiba could actually see him. He then heard the Inuzuka's voice telling him that that's why he used the dynamic marking technique. Now he's got a permanent lock on Zaku due to nothing else in the room, smelling like a urinal. Zaku could hear Kiba landing on something far away, giving him away in the room. Jumping back to his feet, Zaku growls and points his hands where he last heard sound. He then blasts airwaves there, only to hear Kiba laugh from behind him and feel something hit him in the back of the head, knocking him over. Kiba admonishes that he only threw his sandals over there to throw him off. Zaku gets in a rage and stands up, pointing his hands at where he remembered his so-called brother and mother had been. He yells at Kiba to stop playing with him or else he'd kill those idiots. Kiba, clouded by smoke, grew a vicious snarl on his face. While Zaku couldn't see that, he could definitely sense killing intent coming from Kiba, and its source was literally directly in front of him. In fact, a little too close. Before he could react, he felt Kiba grab his collar, and once again he flew into the passing fang while still holding onto Zaku, spinning him around at high speed. From there, he began to drag him around the arena, slamming him into every surface he could actually get him onto. With Kiba's high-speed spinning going all the way around the area, it was starting to dissipate the smoke that he had built up, and now everyone could see the battle. With Zaku barely able to hold on to the spinning Kiba, Kiba decides to tell him 2 things that he just didn't get. Number 1, in a battle where one sense of smell or hearing is the weapon, an Inuzuka will never be defeated. Thinking back to what he's seen of his mother teaching Naruto the tree walking exercise, Kiba stops his rampage by sticking his feet to the ceiling of the arena for the briefest of moments as what he just said rested for the nearly unconscious Zaku. The sound boy had one last trump card and pushed the last of his chakra to his hands to make the next burst 100% sound instead of air. If he can make a loud enough noise next to Kiba's sensitive ears, he could do some damage and free himself from his grasp. He does so, and simultaneously, Kiba, Sume, and Naruto feel intense pain in their ears. Only the latter two recede on a much lower scale than Kiba's, whose eardrums instantly ruptured, causing his grip on Zaku to falter as he's passing out slowly, causing his passing Fang to also slow down a bit, as it looked like he might be down for the count. But shocking Zaku, Kiba snarls back to consciousness, grabbing his collar once again and speeding up his technique, even while having really no sense of equilibrium and with blood pouring out of his ears. The two slam into the ground with incredible force, with Zaku landing flat on his back and making the smallest of cracks in the floor from the force. Kiba lands on his feet next to him, already wobbling from his loss of hearing and balance. He can't hear himself, but he yells out, "And the other thing, don't you ever threaten my family!" And with that, Hayate awards Kiba the win, as the idiotic Inuzuka grinned up at his brother and team before he himself passed out. Medics soon arrive to take both away to the hospital. Sume stops them to ask if his hearing is going to be forever damaged, and they rush her off to explain that if they don't leave now, then it would be. Most people would be pretty stunned by Kiba's performance, the Sound Ninja especially. Having really not expected that kind of power for someone without a Kekkei Genkai, that was pretty shocking. Sasuke was also pretty unnerved. Remember, he had never gone to the Land of Waves in this timeline, and his first big battle was against Orochimaru in the Forest of Death, someone who he was more unprepared for than he was for Zabuza in canon, and someone who scared him more than Zabuza did in canon. Not to mention, in that battle, he saw Naruto and his dog unleash a similar kind of raw, unchecked power, and that unnerved him and upset him as well. How many people was he going to find out were stronger than him, or than he thought they were in a single day? Naruto felt very negative right now. Not only were two of his family members in the hospital currently, not to mention Hinata had not won her match as well, but this version of Naruto had become very sympathetic and somewhat protective ever since he'd killed Nozomaru's brothers and sisters by trying to impart his Nine-Tails chakra onto a litter of puppies. He looks down to see Akamaru still sitting where his master had told him to in the stands and being obedient. Naruto sighs and bends down to pick up his brother's puppy and runs off to catch up with the medics, convincing them to take the pup with them before rushing off back to the arena. Match 7, Shikamaru wins. Sakura here is stronger than her canon counterpart, but so is Shikamaru for one, and even without that, I don't think she has much of a counter for his mind or his ninjutsu. Match 8, Ken wins. I'm lying, Neji wins. Ken is definitely not fast enough to deal with Neji, and beyond that, Neji is not so vulnerable to her genjutsu. Once again, he just saw two other Sound Ninja fight, and they use sounds. Her sim won't have bells on them, 1 + 2 = 3, Neji wins. Match 9, Naruto versus Temari is fun. Temari is strong, like way stronger than she is given credit for even as a kid. That said, she would definitely come into this fight underestimating Naruto. She would likely realize that he was related to Kiba and account for that, but she definitely isn't about to go all out from the start. Meanwhile, Naruto isn't in the mood to hold back anymore. Like I just said, he's in a pretty negative headspace and he kinda wants to just get back to the hospital and just be with Nozomaru. As soon as the match starts, Temari brags telling Naruto to give up, and he actually mirrors the same suggestion, telling her that if she doesn't, then she's gonna get hurt. Since Naruto wasn't coming to her, she unravels her fan and is about to take a swipe at him. But the entire arena freezes as very dark malevolent chakra begins seeping out of Naruto, even more than what he just used inside the Forest of Death. Either Naruto's connection to the Nine-Tails had gotten stronger, or Sume had loosened his seal way too much. As Naruto's canine teeth became extremely elongated and stuck out of his top lip, he actually rushed straight at Temari and punched right through her fan, denting the metal in to where the fan could no longer open. Having braced herself once he had charged at her, she used her fan to block, and seeing the huge dent that could have been her forehead, she decides to give up then and there. There was still an invasion to deal with, and this guy seemed a lot like Gaara, not to be trifled with. Yes, I know, I really do hate OP Naruto stories, and that's not really what I was trying to do with this scenario, but this version of Naruto is a lot stronger than the canon version of Naruto, and I couldn't find a great way for Temari to stay into this fight without it going on for much longer as I did in the original draft of this story. So, like it or not, that'll be how we end match 9. In match 10, Ino would have realized by process of elimination, just by seeing who was participating in match 9, that her opponent would be Sasuke, who she would respects and has a crush on. That being said, it would make it really difficult for her to fight him regardless, so I think she immediately forfeits, which actually pisses off Sasuke. Now he doesn't even get a chance to test himself on top of all the BS he'd gone through today. Something Orochimaru, who posed as a Sound Team sensei, takes notice of, as he would still be present as with Sasuke and Kakashi. From here, the rest of the prelim saga would go the same as in canon, with the explanations of why the finals are a month away, yada yada yada. Then we get our 5 random matchups. Match number 1, Gaara vs. Dosu. Match number 2, Sasuke vs. Naruto. Match number 3, Shikamaru vs. Choji. Match number 4, Kiba vs. Neji. And match number 5, Kankuro vs. Rock Lee. These actually were random. So from here, Naruto and Team 7, as well as Sume and Team 8 go to the hospital to see Kiba, who cannot get out for about, let's say, 3 days. From here, Naruto goes on to check on Ozumaru, who currently isn't well enough to wake up still. Sume reveals to Naruto that the puppy should wake up relatively soon, but he'd be without his partner for a good amount of training. And that being said, I also think that Kiba should be out for a while since he did just have his eardrums burst. He'll be up and training soon, but I think at least a week off is pretty realistic. Now that being said, as I mentioned earlier, Sume would likely already be acquainted with Jiraiya and informed that he would like to take over Naruto's training for the time being. But in this timeline, I'm not sure what Jiraiya would be able to teach him. Something was shown to Naruto in an attempt to show him to summon large amounts of the Nine-Tails chakra and control it. That's a skill that in this timeline, he's already pretty good at. He's already pretty well on the road of, if you don't have any finesse, then just be the strongest blunt weapon that you can be kind of skill set that Jiraiya wished to teach him. So with that in mind, I think Sume would work it out to where, in the time that Nozomaru is going to be out of commission, where Naruto can't really train in any of the art forms or ninjutsu of the Inuzuka clan, that time can be spent training with Jiraiya. When the puppy is back in fighting shape as well as Kiba, she wants to do some more training with the two of them that will give them some more general improvements along a lot of areas. Chakra control training. If this is what happens when Nozomaru uses the power of the Nine-Tails, then it's not very viable, and they need to figure something out that can help the pup to not really rely on that power. Kankuro and Gaara wouldn't train, though I do think that Dosu would attack Gaara and be killed as he did in canon, just because it pretty much happened in canon anyway, and we still do get Hayate's death taking place. There's really no major reason to change that. For Sasuke, I believe that Kakashi would deliberately not teach Sasuke the Chidori in this timeline. Instead, I think he would push Sasuke to break his physical limits and gain a large amount of speed like in canon, while simultaneously he'd be training him to better use the Sharingan as a whole. But his focus would be on cultivating Sasuke's skill with the Eye of Hypnotism to give him a better counter against Naruto's use of the Nine-Tails chakra, which in this timeline has shown to be pretty masterful. Lee would basically just train with Guy to improve general speed, power, and taijutsu prowess. Pretty simple yet effective. Neji would also train in the exact same fashion as in canon. It's not clear to me whether or not Shikamaru actually would train in canon. Beyond that, I'm not certain that he would be doing so here, and much less that he'd be willing to even fight Choji, as in canon he states that Choji is someone he would not want to fight. I think there are two possibilities here. Either Shikamaru refuses to train as he plans to give up at the beginning of the match, and Asuma, Choji, Ino, and Shikamaru's parents, basically the people who have any clout to influence the decision he makes, are fine with this, or one of those people involved does not accept this from Shikamaru and they reject this entire plan as a whole, forcing Shikamaru to train and making sure that he would not forfeit when the match began. We'll go with this one. I just don't see Asuma or Shikamaru's mother allowing the boy to avoid this completely. As such, it's hard to argue who would train who. At the end of the day, I think it'd be decided for the boys to just train with their fathers for family techniques, and if Asuma had to choose someone, it'd be kind of like picking favorites. In this case, I think it's most likely to have Shikamaru try and work on strategies and scenarios to beat Choji while playing shogi with his dad, and maybe have him practice evasion and maneuvering some more, while Choji anticipates this and tries to teach Choji how to rush his opponent down and leave little time for counters or countermeasures. I think this could be achieved through a combination of the tree walking and water walking exercises and having Choji run laps with the encouragement of food later on. As for Naruto, he would likely be introduced to Jiraiya in a lot more professional manner than he was in canon. I see the man asking Naruto a few questions about his chakra, and with the results of some of his questions, asking Naruto to actually pull on some of the Nine-Tails chakra in front of him to show him what he's actually capable of. Furthermore, Jiraiya would likely see no real reason to teach him summoning because he is really just not needed here. He's even more strapped for time as he was in canon, with Sume actually wanting to train Naruto at some point as well, so I propose that Jiraiya would still see a good value in having Naruto sign the summoning contract and learn collaboration techniques with mid-sized toads instead of just trying to summon really big giant toads to pull on Nine-Tails chakra. If you're wondering why I sound a bit different right now, I actually just ran out of script. But this is more a reference to the anime only section where Jiraiya attempted this because in canon, Naruto did a collaboration transformation with Gambabunta, and he also did the collaboration technique with Yamato when they arrived to fight Kakuzu, so he could actually do it pretty well, but it'd be cool if he did more like Jiraiya does in canon, just with Nozomaru later on when those two are both healthy and able to fight together. As for what Sume, Naruto, and Kiba train with, well, she would first likely make sure that Akamaru and Nozomaru are shown how to properly do a dynamic marking to avoid any more accidents from Kiba. Kiba. And beyond that, more refined chakra control to help the boys in terms of pretty much everything, like their endurance in terms of chakra, their strength, speed, just overall stats. I know that seems a bit lazy, but the boys are young and chakra control is really important, especially when you are younger. As you see later in Naruto, when the better his control is, the easier it'll be for him to get more and more of the techniques down pat. So when the day of the finals finally arrives, we would see that Gaara is there without his actual opponent, so they would decide to push his match back until Dosu arrives, although nobody really knows where he is, while Baki, Temari, and Kankuro keep looking at Gaara like, bruh, why did you do that? This would push match number 2, Sasuke Uchiha versus Naruto Uzumaki up. But that Plus Ultra fans will all be leaving this timeline of the podcast off for right now. I know this is a really bad cliffhanger, but I kind of want to do something like what I did with What If Sasuke Was Born a Female, where it was a 55-minute chunk of just the story. We kind of got through it and had a long podcast, and I feel like the more we get through with the baby bits here, we can kind of finish it up with a third one later on. So the next one, it might be like 50 minutes, maybe an hour long, and we'll finish it up there. Sorry guys, this will just help me without, doing it there and have it be really rushed and not with a lot of detail. So be sure to like this podcast episode, subscribe to the channel with notifications on, so when the next podcast that involves this story comes out, you'll be notified and you'll be able to see that video as soon as it comes out. Share the videos with your friends and comment down any thoughts or criticisms or ideas you might have about this scenario or other scenarios using hashtag #PlusUltraFam with the correct spelling of capital P, capital U, and capital F. That'll do it for this time. As always, take care of yourselves and go beyond Plus Ultra.